Every valley shall be filled, and every mountain and hill shall be brought low. Pride. We need to be brought low. St. Paul refers to the problem in the first reading. He refers to the danger of presumption in placing ourselves in the judgment seat of the High King. He warns us not to judge before the time, and he even goes as far as not judging himself. We can fool ourselves. We priests know that the less one goes to confession, the poorer the quality of the confession tends to be. It's an indication that in that situation, the awareness of sin, great or small, is not there, or hardly. Those who go often are like a nurse, always with her hands in detergent, always spick and span. A person who works on a building site will not feel one more clod of mud. And people go through life with great clods of mud on their immortal soul. Now I want to zoom into the dangers of both entering into judgment on others and also this fundamental problem of illusion, which is a participation in the fundamental sin which got the whole cosmos into trouble. Lucifer's first fall, pride. This morning, I spent a moment in the company of the Curé Vaz, and I saw how there, at times, he was so caught up in the divine, and there is a mystical side to him that people are not fully aware of, that one could see at that point whatever one said, for good or for bad, matter when placed before the living God and so closely bonded with him that all that mattered was the union. At that point one sees, well, if a person is so keen on justifying himself at all costs, it's an indication that he's not on that level at all, but purely on the other, what St. Paul refers to as the human. And we do it, if we're honest, do we not? I was reading also the case of another holy mystic who was actually stigmatized and badly treated by her own in the convent, but she didn't mind one bit, because she saw the glory of being hidden and being seen by only one, and she lost not an iota of peace. Now, compare that with those who go through life sometimes attracting a lot of praise, a lot of glory. Now it's found in new forms, virtual and invisible, but very important to the person who has a following on a screen and in the cybersphere. They think they're more important than someone else. Well, actually, they're probably far less value in their interior life, precisely because they're drained by the virtual. Now, I want to go back in time. When I was young, as all those in my ambit, I had great heroes. They would have been the reformers, so-called. And we looked up to them and sang their hymns with great gusto. One of the reformers has recently found his way to a niche, I think on the outside wall of St. Peter's. I was puzzled when I had with me a while back an Italian hermit who was extremely well read, a lady, who told me something I didn't know until she came. And it is the case of a mystic who was beatified in 2011 by Pope Benedict. Sister Serafina founded the Congregation of the Angels. And she was going on a journey one day and had a great, as you know, like all the saints, magnetism towards the Blessed Sacrament. She couldn't spend a day without closely loving Jesus in the tabernacle. And she, in the dusk, looked for a church, having got off her mode of transport as it was. But the church was already locked. And so she got into prayer mode and adored the Blessed Sacrament from the step of the church at the door. Now she, being a mystic, had this link with the angelic world, a real one I mean, and she would have visits, nudges and signs. And an angel came to her, I think it was her own, and said this to her as she knelt in prayer: "Get up, for the church before which you are praying is a Protestant church." Now, when she got to that place, she had been puzzled by the amount of noise and disturbance in the town. There was a huge event about to take place, but she hadn't a clue what it was. And actually, the head of state himself was involved. And it's in that context that the angel wanted to show her something. She had, without realizing it, come to the birthplace of the person who was being feasted publicly that day, with great honor. And the angel showed her what horrified her: that the person being feasted was not where they thought he was. And the angel opened the underworld to her to show her exactly where he was. And he went on to indicate a particular torment that he had in a part of his body that explained history. It was the part of his body that had done damage. It was linked, the brain, with this fundamental problem. Because although the person had gifts, great gifts actually, he began to own them. Does that sound familiar? To own them. And to acquire what? Independence of spirit. It can happen with the following. Which led then to intellectual pride. Which then led to disobedience to just authority. There is an order in the universe and in the church, just as in the inferno there is a perfect order in reverse. The angels still keep their rank, but in reverse. And so it was that she got up, amazed at what she'd been shown, but had to be discreet, and so do we. But it is a lesson, my friends, that we need to be very careful before pronouncing judgment either for good or for bad with regard to where people have gone. We do not know. This is the end of the liturgical year and also of the year itself. And it is well to pause on time and eternity for a second. Yesterday, I was given, out of the blue, a strange shock. It came out of a packet. Do you know that a picture is not just a set of molecules on a page? It is actually able to make us travel in time and enter again into a frame of moments that we once lived and that stand before us again on the page. And I felt tears coming to my eyes. Why? And I leave it with you, especially those of you who are young. I didn't appreciate time when it was there. Pride. I wouldn't listen to just authority. When we're young, we know it all, do we not? Before you make that blunder, young people, be careful. Sometimes grey hairs have wisdom. And I looked at my old abbot, who was kindness itself, and his successor, who was our teacher, who is still alive and kindness itself. And I thought, you idiot, if only you'd listened. I'd been formed in France. We still had the sign language, it's extremely severe, but I'd been moved to Ireland for intellectual reasons. And I didn't settle because I was too formed by the French thing. But I should have realized there are other things in life except rules, because the supreme rule is charity, and charity they had. I just finish with two little quotes to help you understand the difference between the way a rule might be lived in one culture and in another. In France, it was extremely strict and it functioned perfectly. In Ireland, it was very elastic, but somehow other values were sometimes more important. I remember, for instance, that one thing about the abbot in question was that he was in community for his community. And if a person was not well, he had time. And when a saint with whom I'd worked, Father Canis, was dying in hospital, he spent hours at the martyr, the abbot now, next to him until he died, and described to us in chapter every second of his death. And he stood there, or sat behind him, and Father Canis, just again, fully lucid but very weak, said, "Give me absolution again." And he did, a few seconds before he went. And do you know that one of the last things he did before petering out, he wanted the abbot to help him. He made one last sign of priestly blessing over the world that he was leaving, a priest unto the end. That abbot I should have listened to. He gave good chapters, and he gave them also in an Irish way. E.g., when we go into choir, we're not there to go into cloud cuckoo land, and he'd go on about how to behave in choir concretely. And then Father Lawrence, his successor, still alive, goodness itself. And I remember, just to illustrate the point, going to confession to him one week, because we used to go every week, and we'd all been watching the dead body of one of our brethren, actually Father Canis, who, by the way, had done penance unto death, because after the council he wanted to make up for the lack of penance in the house, and he took on double amount on himself, and he died at the early age of 74, a saint. And we were there next to his body, because they bury him normally without coffin, and we were praying all nights, one after the other, always in groups of two, the Psalter non-stop. And at midnight, a couple of novices were tired and went to get some tea to wake up in the kitchen, and came back, this is the point, with a Kit Kat each. And I accused myself of this Kit Kat in the chapter room next to the coffin of Father Canis. And good Father Lawrence looked at me and said, "You should have offered one to Father Canis." This was Ireland's understanding of charity and joy in the Lord. Remember that, my friends, as you go through life. Charity covers a multitude of sins.